The most unforgettable moment is often the one you said nothing because silence echoes longer than words. Folks, let me tell you something real. There's always that one moment they'll replay in their mind again and again. Not the big fight, not the apology, not the dramatic scene they thought would stay with them. Nah, it's that quiet, unshaken moment when you stood there, calm as still water, and didn't react. That moment when they expected chaos, and you gave them peace instead. You became the moment they can't forget, not because you tried, but because you didn't flinch. Hey my friends, before we dive into this Stoic journey of power and presence, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. If you're someone who values inner strength, peace over drama, and becoming the person no one forgets, this is for you. So stay with me. Now imagine this. You're standing in front of someone who once meant the world to you. Maybe they betrayed you. Maybe they underestimated you. Maybe they thought you'd break. And in that one moment, they were waiting for your reaction. They expected you to lose it, to beg, to explode. But you didn't. You looked them dead in the eye, held your posture, and said more with your silence than any words ever could. That, right there, that's the moment they'll relive when they're alone. That's the scene they'll rewind in their mind when they wonder what they lost. Because here's the truth, humans don't remember noise, they remember impact. And Stoicism, my friends, is pure impact in disguise. See, the world teaches us that if we want to be remembered, we have to scream louder, beg harder, fight more. But that's a lie. That's what weak people do when they don't know their worth. Real strength? It's in restraint. Real presence? It's in peace. And real power? It leaves a shadow on someone's memory without ever needing to raise its voice. Let me give you a metaphor. Think of yourself as a mountain. You don't move for storms. You don't argue with the wind. You stand, tall and unshaken, while the world spins in chaos around you. And in doing so, people don't just see you, they feel you, even long after they walk away. Stoicism teaches us not just how to live, but how to leave a mark that doesn't come from reaction, but from the way we stay rooted, the way we stay composed, the way we walk away when it's time, without guilt, without noise, just silent certainty. Now here's the twist. That moment they replay. It's not really about you. It's about them realizing they couldn't shake you. It's about them realizing you were different. And that realization becomes the mirror they can't look away from. So don't chase being remembered by being loud. Be remembered because you were the only one who didn't lose themselves in the chaos. That's the art. That's the Stoic way. And that's the secret. They'll never tell you that's what they miss, but they'll feel it every time they think of you. Write this in the comments. I leave a lasting impact. Because that's what you're here to do. Quietly, powerfully, permanently. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1. The echo of one defining moment. The moment you stopped chasing is the moment they started remembering. Let's talk about that moment. The one that doesn't need background music. The one where your silence hit harder than a scream. That moment where you didn't reach out, didn't plead, didn't chase closure. You just stood there, calm, still, powerful. That moment, my friends, lives in their mind rent-free. They replay it, they dissect it. They wonder what was going through your head, why you didn't crack. Why you didn't fold like they expected. That's when they knew they weren't in control anymore. That's when they realized you weren't coming back the same way. Maybe not at all. Have you ever seen someone stare into a fire? Not because they're cold, but because something inside them is trying to remember warmth. That's what it feels like for them now. You've become that fire. Not the flames that rage, but the quiet ember that keeps glowing long after everyone thought it was gone. And every time they sit in silence, every time they scroll through the past in their mind, there it is, that moment. You, silent. You, strong. You, untouchable. And maybe right now you're asking yourself, why does that moment matter so much to them? Why does it linger? Why do they remember the second you didn't react more than all the times you gave and gave and gave? Because here's the truth, my friends. They never thought you'd find your strength. They thought you'd always respond. They believed you were predictable, that every pull would be met with a chase, every cold word with a warm apology, every exit with a desperate door-hold. But then something changed. You changed. And that change created the very thing they can't stop thinking about. People don't remember the noise. They remember the shock of silence. They remember who stayed calm while they lost their cool. They remember who walked away with dignity while they were still caught in the performance. And the lie they told themselves, that you needed them more than they needed you. That lie broke in that moment, and now they can't stop replaying it. Because the lie doesn't hold anymore. That one moment, the one where you didn't react, became their moment of truth. But let's talk about why it's hard. Why it hurts to be the one who holds it together. Why most people react, yell, lash out, break down. Because we've been taught that if we don't fight for someone, we're letting them go. That if we don't explain ourselves, we'll be misunderstood. That if we don't speak, we'll be forgotten. That's the fear, isn't it? The fear that silence will erase us. That calm means defeat, but that's the lie. The truth is, your silence didn't erase you. It defined you. Your composure didn't mean you didn't care. It meant you finally started caring about yourself. And let me tell you, when someone sees you prioritize your peace over proving a point, that's when you stop being a chapter and start becoming a lesson, a memory, a ghost they can't quite forget. Think of a sword being forged. It's not loud, it's deliberate. Each strike, each heat, each cool down is a process of refinement. And that moment you held your tongue, that was your forging moment. That was when you stopped being a version of yourself built by reaction and started becoming a version built by intention. And now your presence carries weight, not because you fight for attention, but because you carry stillness like armor. And they feel that stillness now. They don't say it, but they feel it. In every silence, in every dream, in every late night they stare at the ceiling, trying to retrace what went wrong. And always, they land on that moment. You, unmoved. You, unavailable. You, unforgettable. So if you're wondering whether that moment mattered, whether they noticed, let me be clear. They did. It's on replay. It's the silent alarm they can't snooze. And if you're thinking of breaking your silence just to be remembered louder, don't. Because you've already made your mark in a way they can't erase. You're not the echo that fades. You're the silence that stays. Write this in the comments. I'm the moment they remember. Say it for yourself. Say it for your healing. Say it for the version of you that stayed silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you've entered a new season, one where your strength is felt, not forced. And if that one moment made you unforgettable, imagine what happens next when you start living every day with that same composure. Stick around, because what's coming will teach you how to master that silence, how to walk like power, how to respond like a storm that never needs to thunder. Let's keep going. Number 2. Why Stoicism leaves a mark. People forget what you gave them, but they remember how unbothered you were when they thought you'd fall apart. My friends, let's get something straight. In this world of over-explaining, oversharing, overreacting, there's something terrifyingly unforgettable about a person who doesn't flinch. Someone who doesn't raise their voice, doesn't panic, doesn't beg for understanding. Someone who, in the middle of the chaos, just breathes. That's the kind of energy Stoicism teaches you to master. And let me tell you, that kind of presence, it haunts people in the most powerful way. You want to know why they can't stop thinking about you. It's not the love you gave. It's not the conversations you had. It's not even the memories you built. It's the moment they expected you to fall, and you didn't. The moment they thought they had power, and you didn't even blink. That quiet strength, that's what burned your image into their memory. That's what makes you unforgettable. Because we live in a world where everyone's trying to outscream each other. Emotions everywhere, rage on display. People throwing words like weapons, hoping something lands hard enough to prove a point. But you did something rare. You didn't perform. You withheld. You walked with control. You spoke with clarity. You responded instead of reacted. And that is where Stoicism leaves its mark. Think of it like this. If life is a battlefield, most people show up flailing swords, losing breath, swinging in every direction just to feel like they matter. But a Stoic, they stand still, calm, calculated, not because they're afraid to fight, but because they've already won the war inside themselves. And when someone faces that kind of energy, they remember it. Because it's not normal, it's not expected, it breaks the pattern. And breaking patterns, that's what the brain can't forget. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Desperation is forgettable. Over-explanation is forgettable. Emotional outbursts are forgettable. Why? Because they're common. They're expected. But peace in the middle of betrayal? That's rare. Grace when disrespected? That's unforgettable. When someone pushes you, hoping for a reaction, and all you offer them is stillness, that's when you flip the script. That's the moment when their mind starts to loop. Why weren't they angry? Why didn't they try to fix it? Were they always this strong? Did I mean less to them than I thought? Or did I never know who they really were? And now, you're no longer just a memory. You're a mystery. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. That's the biggest lie people believe. Stoicism is about containing your fire instead of letting it burn everything around you. It's about knowing exactly how you feel, but choosing when and how to express it. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone earns your reaction. And when people realize they no longer have access to that side of you, it shakes them. You see, folks, people remember who stays solid when everything else is shaking. They remember who doesn't need the last word, who doesn't chase apologies, who doesn't argue for their worth. Because that energy is rare, and rare is unforgettable. Do you know how many people can walk into a room and drain the air with their chaos? Countless. But how many can enter and bring peace with their silence? How many can walk away with elegance instead of noise? Few. And that's what Stoicism makes you. The few, the rare, the unforgettable. And maybe you're still wrestling with the lie you were told, that being too calm makes you look like you didn't care. But let me flip that lie for you. Being calm didn't make you cold. It made you in control. And trust me, they noticed. They might not have said it out loud, but deep inside, they felt it. The shift, the distance, the line they couldn't cross anymore. And now, when they think of you, they don't think about what you said. They think about what you didn't say. They don't remember how you cried. They remember how you stopped reaching out. They remember how you let go, not because you didn't care, but because you started caring about your own peace more than proving a point. And that, my friends, is a mark that doesn't fade. Write this in the comments right now. My calm is unforgettable. Say it like a declaration. Let it echo. Show the world, show yourself, that you've chosen a higher path, one that doesn't need loud reactions or messy endings, just quiet closure and power in your posture. Stay with me, because we're not done yet. What's coming next? We're going even deeper into the moment where everything changed. The moment they saw the version of you that couldn't be broken. The version that doesn't run, doesn't beg, doesn't fight to be seen, because that version has already seen their own worth. Let's go. Number 3, when you didn't react, they noticed. The moment you stopped responding to their chaos is the exact moment they realized they lost something rare. My friends, let's break this down. You didn't say anything wild, you didn't storm out, you didn't send the angry text or try to explain your side, you didn't scream, block or plead, you just didn't react. And that one choice, that moment of quiet composure, it left a bigger scar than any loud exit ever could. You may have thought it went unnoticed, like maybe they didn't care, but trust me, they noticed. In fact, they noticed it so deeply, it rewired how they see you forever. You see, people expect patterns. They expect you to fold like you always did, to text back, to show up, to keep forgiving. That's how they stay in control, by relying on your predictability. But when you broke that pattern, when you didn't chase, when you didn't even flinch, that's when their mind broke too. That's when confusion turned into regret, and regret turned into obsession. Because the brain doesn't know what to do with a void that used to overflow with energy. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine someone pulling a lever, expecting a light to turn on, like it always has. They pull it again. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. They begin to panic. Why isn't this working? Did the power go out? Is the bulb dead? Or worse, is the switch no longer connected to anything at all? That's what you became, the switch they thought they could flip any time, only to realize you had disconnected. And in that silence, they heard everything they were too loud to hear before. They heard your worth. They heard your absence. They heard their own mistakes echo back at them. That's the paradox of presence. When you remove it, people finally feel it. Maybe they were used to you reacting, to you trying to fix things, to you filling the awkward silences with warmth. But you stopped. You became the silence, and in that moment, their chaos had nothing to bounce off. That's when your stillness became deafening. That's when they realized they had nothing left to argue with, nothing left to push against, just themselves and the consequences of their own behavior. And I get it. In that moment, you probably questioned yourself. You probably thought, should I have said something? Should I have stood up for myself louder? Will they think I didn't care? But that's fear talking. That's the voice of conditioning trying to drag you back into the role you've outgrown. Because true power doesn't need to yell to be felt. It just needs to be. And you, standing in your unshaken stillness, were felt louder than any reaction could ever deliver. It's funny, isn't it? The world teaches you to react, to get attention, to speak, to be remembered, to fight, to prove your value. But Stoicism whispers something different, something powerful. It tells you that sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. That silence doesn't mean weakness. It means mastery. You didn't react because you didn't need to. You didn't respond because it wasn't worth your energy. You didn't chase because you finally realized your peace is more important than their chaos. And even if they acted unfazed, even if they shrugged or walked away like it didn't matter, believe me, it did. It mattered so much. They're still thinking about it now, still trying to decode your calm, still wondering what made you finally stop playing the game. And here's the deeper truth. When you didn't react, you forced them to sit with themselves. And for some people, that's the scariest thing in the world. Because as long as you were reacting, they didn't have to face their reflection. But when your energy disappeared, all they had left was the weight of their own behavior. They noticed. Oh, they noticed. Because your silence spoke volumes. It said, I see what's happening, and I refuse to match it. It said, you no longer get access to my energy. It said, I have outgrown this version of myself, the one who always gave too much, felt too much, chased too hard. So now they sit there, playing back the moment you didn't flinch, the moment you didn't send the message, the moment you didn't look back. And every time they remember it, they feel something they never expected to feel: respect. Maybe a little fear, definitely some loss. Because the version of you who used to break, that version is gone. And what's left? Someone who can't be shaken. Write this in the comments. They noticed my silence. Say it with pride. Say it with your chest, because your silence was not emptiness. It was presence. It was power. It was the beginning of your transformation. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your peace is not up for negotiation anymore. Stay with me, because we're about to go even deeper. Up next, we'll talk about how your stillness, your calm, quiet energy, is louder than any drama they've ever known, and why that stillness is exactly what they can't stop thinking about. Let's keep moving forward. Number 4, stillness is louder than words. When you master the art of not reacting, your silence becomes their loudest memory. Stillness. Not many people talk about it. Not many people understand it. But those who feel it, they never forget it. Because in a world that's constantly loud, stillness is disturbing, unsettling. It forces people to hear their own noise, their own guilt, their own chaos bouncing back at them. And when you become still, really still, you stop being just another person in their story. You become the part they can't stop thinking about. Folks, let me tell you something powerful. Your calmness was the mirror they weren't ready to look into. Your lack of reaction wasn't weakness, it was reflection. Because your stillness didn't scream, but it exposed. It exposed how they needed attention to feel important. It exposed how they fed on your responses to feel powerful. It exposed how they confused your kindness with permission. And when you didn't give them what they expected, when you just stood there, solid, centered, untouchable, they had to sit with themselves. And for some people, that's a punishment worse than any words you could have thrown. Let's use a metaphor, my friends. Picture a wild storm hitting a mountain. The wind roars, the rain pours, lightning crashes. But the mountain, it doesn't move, it doesn't react. It just stands. That's you. You were the mountain. And when the emotional storm hit, you didn't break. You didn't fall apart. You just stood tall. And that stillness, that quiet strength, it shook them more than 1,000 arguments ever could. People don't expect stillness. They expect fire. They expect noise. They expect drama. Because that's the language of the world. But when you go quiet, when you pull back, not in fear, but in power, you rewrite the story. Suddenly, you're not the one reacting. You're the one being watched, observed, studied. Because now, your every move, or lack of it, has weight. And here's the part they don't talk about. When you stop reacting, you stop giving them emotional leverage. They no longer know where they stand. They can't tell if you're hurt, if you're healed, if you're even thinking about them. And that mystery, that unknown, that drives people crazy, because control is lost. Predictability is gone. They're left replaying your stillness like a riddle they can't solve. You may think they forgot. You may believe they've moved on. But the truth is, they're stuck in that moment. The one where they realized you weren't going to play the game anymore. And the irony, it's the quietest part of the story, yet it's the loudest in their memory. Because people remember presence, and you became presence itself, not by doing more, but by doing less, not by explaining, but by embodying, not by proving your point, but by living it. Your silence said, I don't owe you a performance. I don't owe you closure. I owe myself peace. That's the moment you stopped being someone they could control and started being someone they respected, maybe even feared a little, because they could no longer trigger you, no longer provoke you, no longer predict you. You became still, and in that stillness, you became powerful. Let me ask you this. Have you ever sat in a room with someone and said nothing, but they felt everything? That's what Stoic stillness does. It speaks through the space between your words. It moves through your body language. It whispers through the pauses. It makes people feel you, even when you're not trying to be felt. That's what stays with them. And the reason this is hard for most people, it's because we've been conditioned to believe that if we don't react, we'll be forgotten. That if we stay silent, they'll think we're weak. But that's the biggest lie of all. Because when you finally learn how to hold yourself back, you actually become more memorable. Why? Because the world is full of noise, and you became peace. You became rare. You became the calm they can't find in themselves. Write this in the comments right now. My stillness speaks louder. Let it be your affirmation, your standard, your reminder that you don't need to fight to be remembered. You don't need to raise your voice to make impact. You just need to remain anchored in who you are. You're not here to prove your worth. You're here to protect your peace. And when you operate from that level of strength, people will notice, even if they never admit it, even if they pretend to forget. Deep down, they'll always remember the moment you didn't flinch, the moment you stood your ground, the moment you gave them nothing, and it felt like everything. Stay with me, because next we're stepping into one of the heaviest truths of all. The moment you walked away and actually meant it. The moment they expected a return, but the door never reopened. That's the part they'll feel in the silence between their thoughts. And we're about to explore why that moment doesn't just echo, it haunts. Let's keep going. Number 5. The moment you walked away and meant it. It wasn't the goodbye that broke them. It was the fact that you never looked back. There's a silence that speaks louder than any words you could have said. It's the silence that follows a decision. A real one. The kind that doesn't wobble. The kind that doesn't come with a second guess or a backup plan. The kind that says, I love myself more than I love trying to make this work. And my friends, that moment, when you walked away and meant it, that's the moment they'll keep replaying over and over again. Because people don't expect it. They're used to doors that swing back open. They're used to second chances dressed in forgiveness and soft hearts that break and bend and bleed just to keep the connection alive. But you didn't bend this time. You didn't wait for them to realize. You didn't stall hoping they'd chase. You didn't throw one last plea into the void. You just left. And they felt it. They didn't say it, of course. Some people never do. But the shift was real. Something inside them tensed up when they realized the pattern had broken. The rhythm of control? Gone. The emotional power they used to feel? Gone. The safety net of knowing you'd always be there, no matter what they said or did? Gone. That's when the fear kicked in. Not because you hurt them, but because for the first time, you didn't let them hurt you anymore. You see, walking away isn't the hard part. What's hard is walking away with your dignity intact. Walking away without turning it into a performance. Walking away when every bone in your body wants to scream, cry, or explain. But your soul whispers, no more. That's power. That's growth. That's Stoicism in its purest form. And maybe they thought you were bluffing. Maybe they told themselves you'd be back. That's what people do when they underestimate you. They confuse your softness with weakness. They think your loyalty is blindness. They think your patience has no end. But then you do the unthinkable. You choose you. And suddenly, they're left with a memory they didn't expect. The back of you, walking away, quiet, certain, unavailable. Let me give you a metaphor, folks. Think of a candle burning in a dark room. It flickers, it dances, it gives warmth. That was you. And they kept taking that warmth for granted. They never said thank you. They never protected the flame. They just assumed it would keep burning no matter how cold they were. But one day, that flame just went out, and now they're left in the dark, holding their breath, trying to remember what it felt like to be near that light. That's what happens when someone loses a person who found their self-worth. They don't just miss you, they miss the version of themselves that felt seen, forgiven, chosen, despite their flaws. But here's the truth. It's not your job to keep choosing someone who doesn't choose you back. It's not your purpose to heal someone who keeps reopening your wounds. And it's not your destiny to stay where you're shrinking, just to make someone else feel tall. So yes, it was the moment you walked away, but not in anger, not in bitterness. You walked away in peace. And that's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it unforgettable. Because anyone can storm out of a room, but to exit with stillness, that leaves a mark, that lingers, that becomes the scene they replay in silence long after the noise fades. And I know, my friends, I know it wasn't easy. I know your heart cracked a little. I know your hands shook when you chose to be silent instead of sending that one last message. But that moment you chose yourself. That was your rebirth. That was when you stepped into the life that was waiting for you. A life not built on chasing love, but on becoming it. Write this in the comments right now. I walked away with peace. Because that's what you did. You didn't walk away out of hate. You walked away out of honor. You honored your own heart. You honored your worth. You honored the part of you that said, no more lowering my standards for someone who doesn't rise to meet me. And if they're still out there, wondering why you never looked back, let them wonder. That's not your story to explain anymore. You don't need to prove you cared. You don't need to reopen wounds just to be understood. The story of your strength was written the day you left, with grace in your step and closure in your silence. Stay with me, because what comes next is the part that gets even more real. Detachment. The kind that doesn't numb you, but frees you. The kind that turns you into the memory, the energy, the presence that follows them, not through force, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that needed validation from the wrong people. Let's keep going. Number 6. Detachment creates memory, not drama. They thought you didn't care when you stopped reacting. The truth? You cared enough to finally let go. Let's be real, folks. In a world full of noise, the person who detaches quietly becomes the loudest memory, not the one who begs, not the one who yells, not the one who writes novels in the name of closure, but the one who just lets go, the one who walks away without leaving breadcrumbs, the one who detaches without a dramatic scene, without a look what you've lost, without the fireworks. That kind of detachment. It's surgical, clean, sharp, and it leaves a scar in places no apology can ever reach. Now let's break this down, my friends. You see, detachment doesn't mean you didn't feel anything. It doesn't mean you stopped caring overnight. It doesn't mean you didn't cry when no one was looking. It means you chose to feel everything and still walk away. It means you made peace with the fact that not everyone is meant to go where you're going. And in that peace, you stopped trying to make broken things fit. You stopped explaining yourself to people who only listened to respond, not to understand. You stopped showing up where your worth was questioned. That's detachment, not indifference, but liberation. And guess what? That kind of silence, the one that comes from healed detachment, is unforgettable because it doesn't scream, "I'm over it." It whispers, "This no longer controls me." It's the kind of silence that lingers in their mind when they're scrolling through old photos or passing by the places you used to be. It's the quiet realization that you've gone somewhere they can't follow, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself more now. People remember detachment like that. They remember the energy shift. They remember when you stopped fighting for their attention. They remember when your replies got shorter, your tone got lighter, your absence became more consistent than your presence. And at first, They probably thought you were just upset, just pulling back to make a point. But then, time passed, and your silence stayed. That's when it hit them. You weren't playing the game anymore. You'd folded your cards, pushed the table away, and walked out of the room entirely. Let me give you a metaphor here. Imagine a tree in autumn. It doesn't panic when the leaves fall. It doesn't scream or try to glue them back on. It just lets go, quietly, naturally, because the tree knows letting go is part of the process. And that's what you did. You stopped trying to hold on to what no longer nourished you. You didn't curse the wind. You didn't resist the season. You just let the leaves fall and trusted what would bloom in their place. But let's talk about the lie the world sells you. The lie that says, if you're quiet, you're cold. If you're distant, you're heartless. That you only love loudly when you're performing pain. That's nonsense. The truth is, love that evolves into self-respect gets quiet. Love that's no longer desperate becomes still. When you stop reacting, it doesn't mean you've shut down. It means you've grown up. That detachment didn't come from ego. It came from experience. You learned the hard way that people will test your limits, then blame you when they break them. They'll demand grace without offering it. They'll poke you just to see if they still have control. But when you choose not to respond, when you choose stillness instead of retaliation, that's when they start to feel the loss they didn't believe was coming. You're not the drama anymore. You're the lesson, and lessons don't scream, they echo. Write this in the comments. My detachment is my peace. Say it for the version of you that always explained too much, that fought to be understood, that tried to fix the unfixable. Say it for the version of you that's learning to breathe without needing anyone to hold your air. That version deserves to be honored. Because here's what's really happening. They're not just missing you. They're haunted by the energy you used to give freely, the energy they can't recreate, the warmth they didn't value until it turned cold. But by the time they realize what your silence means, you've already built a new life. One where you're not waiting, one where you're not proving, one where you're not shrinking to be loved, you're expanding to be whole. And the beauty of it? You didn't need to burn bridges. You just stopped crossing them. You didn't post a speech. You didn't throw a tantrum. You just started choosing peace. And that peace is the loudest thing they've ever felt. Stay with me. Because next, we're going even deeper into what happens when you become unbothered. Not just for show, but for real. When you stop living for reactions and start living from your core. When nothing shakes your sense of self, not attention, not absence, not even the ghost of what used to be. You're not just forgetting them, you're becoming you. Let's keep going. Number 7, the power of living unbothered. True power is not about being seen, it's about being unfazed when you're unseen. Let's finish strong, my friends, because if there's one shift that changes everything, one mindset that separates the lost from the legendary, it's this: becoming unbothered. Not fake unbothered. Not pretending you don't care unbothered. I'm talking about real, soul-deep, I am peace within myself unbothered. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that doesn't flinch when tested. The kind that walks through chaos with the same calm as if nothing ever moved. You see, most people are addicted to being triggered. Their emotions get pulled like strings on a puppet, and they live in constant reaction. One text ruins their mood. One comment online sends them spiraling. One shift in someone else's energy, and they start doubting their worth. But not you, not anymore, because you've learned. The more unshakable you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. The less you react, the more they reflect. Living unbothered doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means you don't hand your emotions to just anyone. It means your peace is no longer up for auction. It means you don't lose sleep over what isn't yours to fix, explain, or chase. Because when you finally understand your worth, you stop letting the world decide how valuable you are. Think about it. How many times did you let someone else's chaos become your storm? How many times did you overthink a message, reread a conversation, rework your words just to avoid being misunderstood? And what did it cost you? Your sleep, your clarity, your joy. And for what? For people who didn't even recognize the effort. Let that be the last time. Because the unbothered version of you, that's your final form. That's the version that knows how to hold space without needing attention. That's the version that smiles when they try to get a rise out of you, and you give them nothing but stillness. That's the version that doesn't crumble in silence because they're too full of self-respect to chase noise. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine a deep, still lake. Underneath, the water runs cold and powerful, but on the surface, calm, smooth, undisturbed. You could throw a stone, and for a second there's a ripple, but soon it fades, and the lake returns to stillness. That's you now. Let them throw their stones. Let them test your silence. Let them provoke. You will return to calm, because calm is your nature now. And make no mistake, they'll notice when you don't reply with anger, when you don't defend yourself, when you don't explain your boundaries, when you simply live them. That's when your energy becomes legendary, because unbothered energy is magnetic, it's rare, it's divine, and they don't forget it. Here's a truth no one teaches you growing up. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the most respected. You just need to be rooted in your values, rooted in your purpose, rooted in your truth. That's what Stoicism has been trying to teach us for centuries, that your power isn't in how loud you clap back, it's in how quietly you walk away. Living unbothered doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours. You stop picking up what people drop at your feet, hoping you'll carry their guilt, their blame, their regret. You simply step over it and keep walking, not to prove anything, but because your path is forward, not back. Write this in the comments right now. I am unbothered and unstoppable. Let the world see it. Let your past feel it. Let your future honor it. Because when you choose peace, true, deep, soul-fed peace, you become untouchable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can hold you down anymore. You've walked through enough storms. You've been broken, doubted, disrespected, misunderstood. And yet, here you are, calm, strong, centered, unmoved by the games, untouched by the noise. This is your era now, the era of stillness, of focus, of quiet power. And every moment they replay in their mind, that's the echo of you choosing you. So take this energy and carry it into everything, into your work, into your relationships, into the way you speak, walk, breathe, and lead. Be the storm they can't control because you've become the eye of it. And when they look back, because they will, they won't remember the arguments. They'll remember the silence, the calm, the peace you embodied, the moment you didn't react, the moment you walked away, the moment you became unbothered and unforgettable. If this journey has spoken to your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs it. Like the video, subscribe for more wisdom from the Stoic path, and remember this. You don't chase peace. You choose it. And when you do, the world starts chasing you.